Welcome to the Chronic Couch Season 2. It is the premiere of Season 2, and we got some special guests, some VIP guests for our Season 2 premiere. We got the moms in the house. This is my mom, Debbie, and over on the OG Chronic Couch, we got Miss Nina and Chris. And I think we're gonna just shed some light on the mama's perspective and how they've journeyed down this lane with us from our days on sports, from our days back doing sports, and then up and leading through our injuries. So Chris, if you kind of want to take us up from here.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I appreciate, first of all, thanks to the moms for being here. We told y'all in the audience we were going to be back relatively soon, and we meant it. And we wanted to start Season 2 off with something that we know is very impactful and very important, because Eric and I aren't where we are in our journeys without our moms. And that's extremely important for us to highlight, because not only have they been with us through these injuries, but they've been with us throughout life. So as Eric mentioned, our sports careers, education, the ups and downs of our 20s, all of those episodes of our lives and chapters of our lives, these two women have been right by our side. So we really wanted to start off Season 2 with a bang and make sure that you all understand that we are who we are because of the support that's around us. So this season is about support from the community. It's about our support systems. And we know y'all are tired of hearing from us. Y'all listen to us for 6 straight episodes in Season 1. Y'all over it. Y'all know what we deal with. So now we want to highlight the community around us and other people out there going through some things. So that is the official intro spiel for Season 2. And I want to open the floor to you all, because Eric and Debbie, I want you all to explain, more so Debbie, because Eric, I'm tired of hearing your voice, about Eric's journey up until his injury, because I want to just really compartmentalize today's episode into life pre-injury, and then life during the injury, and then life now as we kind of rebuild and pick up the pieces. So Section 1, Chapter 1, it is on you.
Thanks, Chris. Let's see. It started a long time ago, because Eric was doing gymnastics when he was, well, you don't know how tall I am. I'm very short, but I was even taller than him. So he started before he was 10 years old. And as a parent, I would watch him compete, and we would have to sit in the audience. And, there were meets when he would fall and hurt himself, and I couldn't run out there to help him. As a mom, it was the hardest thing. The worst injury, I think, there were a couple bad ones. I think the worst one was in Florida, Tallahassee. See, we agree on that. He was on the high bar, and he fell. I wonder if this was the start of your back injury, looking back.
Maybe.
He fell, boom, right on the high bar, on his back. And I think the wind kind of got knocked out a little bit. And I just sat there like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. My husband and I, we were like, what is wrong with him? What is wrong with him? And his coach was there trying to settle him down, trying to see if he was okay. The coach does all the checking. The parents just sit there and watch. We're not allowed to go down to the floor. And I think that was probably the worst injury.
That was probably the worst injury at a competition. And then, there was definitely lots of other injuries. When my dad was he came to a practice to film for college scouting, and that's when I ruptured my Achilles. So that was probably the worst injury, right?
Yeah, probably the Achilles. And that back injury was tough, just because you were so young.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, after that back injury, he got up. And finished his routine.
Yeah, with the pack of ice.
Yeah, he did not do well on that routine, but that was probably the start of the injuries. And then they went on, and he would stop for a while. Gymnastics, he would get rehabbed, and whether it was his drive or a combination of him and his coach, he would just keep on getting back into the gym and competing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he stopped for a little while. He needed a timeout. I think he, mentally it's really hard. And I know you guys have talked about it. The mental game, excuse me, is almost as hard or harder than the physical game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward, he coached for a while, and he had to coach his kids through some of these injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then what came next with the big injury?
It was, so, my gymnastics career spanned almost 20 years. And then towards the end is when my back injury started. That's when the back pain kind of started. I was in my early 20s. And then, as we've talked about back in season 1, each time you hurt your back, it gets worse and worse, and the recovery gets harder and harder,
and longer and longer
and longer and longer. And so it all came to a head in the summer of 2022 when I did a flip on the beach, and my childhood friend was actually visiting at the time, and you and Dad, I think, were out of town.
We were definitely across the country, and to get a call from your friend and him
in the middle of
the night,
yeah,
that he could not move.
Yeah,
that was rough.
I was stuck. I mean, and so yeah, my friend rushed me to the ER, and then
I had to come out because the friend had to come. She had to come back to Atlanta. I left Atlanta, went to LA to help Eric through
my friend left the door open because I couldn't move. So that's how she got in. And from there, I mean, you were washing my feet.
Yeah.
You were, I was just.
He could not move.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the start of it. And
this most recent 4 years
yeah,
of in and out of pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, I mean, how many times did you travel back and forth?
Many times. And I was still working. So it was really hard for me to always get off on in an instant like that to fly across the country. But we did the best that we could, huh? I think the hardest was during COVID, and he couldn't get in for his surgery. I think you all had touched on that a few times.
Yeah, it was like a 5-month waiting period. That's when the pain medicine became too much, and all the meds that I was taking, and
it was really hard as a mom. And I'm sure, Nina, you understand. I was, however many thousands of miles away, felt like the other side of the world. And I would see Eric in pain. But not only that, I saw him getting slowly more dependent on his pain meds. And I'm in healthcare, and watching him take that medicine and not realizing that he was getting more dependent on the medicine, the pain meds, it was awful for me. And I would say, Eric, you've got to stop these meds. You've got to stop. Like, I could see this look in his eyes that he was hurting, but also he was taking these pain meds and didn't realize how much he knew
it was a lot.
He was taking it prescribed. He wasn't not prescribed the medicine. I don't want anyone to think that he was abusing it. It was just a really long time of being on these medications, and it was so hard for me. And I would check in with him probably too many times per day, because I just wanted to know that he was, you see that, huh, Nina? It's like, yeah, he thought it was too much. And as a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, is he okay? Is he okay? And, I couldn't touch him. I couldn't really see him. I saw him, and all I could see were the eyes, these glossed over pain medicine eyes. And it was killing me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably.
I was almost relieved when he had a surgery, but then I don't know that you've ever really talked about this, but after his first surgery, he was trying to wean off his medicines on his own. and unfortunately didn't wean very well. We ended up in urgent care. He was going through withdrawal. That also was awful for me, not knowing the city, having to drive him to an urgent care, having to advocate for him.
See, where I've lucked out going back to day one when I was a kid is, and Chris and I have talked about self-advocating. She was always my mouthpiece, during surgeries and with the doctors. And so, and that's why I was lucky that she was here through the 3 surgeries that I had for my back, because she kind of took over in that aspect.
I mean, I think the worst thing, of course, seeing him hurting and that sort of thing. I think the hardest thing for me was saying to the doctor, we have got to get him off these medications. And the doctor thankfully also agreed and said, the surgeon.
Yeah.
The pain management doctor, I think, took a path on his own and was just trying to take care of his pain. But because of COVID and everything, I don't think he, and I'm not saying this badly, I just don't think that he had a total handle on what Eric was going through, and was just trying to get him through to the surgery. And then once the surgery happened, I said to the surgeon, we've got to stop this. It's got to stop, because he's taking way too much.
Yeah.
And it was hard, because here now I'm dealing with a 20, almost 30-year-old man, and I'm being the mom, probably, and way more than he wanted me to be the mom. But I felt like at that time, I probably needed to take over, and advocate and say, we got to get off of these. So, and then from, he was able to get off finally. And I think since then you barely take Tylenol.
Yeah.
I mean, now he's on his medicine, which hopefully is better. But one of the trips we came in and got rid of all the pain medicines. Remember? Yeah. Like he had so many, and we got rid of them all.
Yeah.
That was my goal for him. It was very hard. Very hard. And then since that time, I just say to him, Eric, just check in with me every day, even if it's a text, like, hi. That's super important to me. Like, I want him to have his independence. Don't get me wrong. And he's still a grown man, or as you guys say, a grown ass man. But, I just I need to know that he's okay. And I know, Nina, you understand that. It's hard to let go, right? Like, always a mom. And I think that's our story.
Yeah.
That's our story. As I almost start to cry here.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of this conversation, right? And I appreciate you sharing all that, because again, in season 1, people heard it from us. And we were the main characters in our story, so we were able to tell those stories. But to have this so close of a secondary perspective from, again, a motherly standpoint, it is important, because it sheds light on a different story. It's like a movie having a perspective from another character. So that is super important, because it just adds color to the overall situation. So, again, people have they've heard bits and pieces of Eric's story, but now they have, like, Eric essentially told it in black and white, and you just added color to it. And now it just makes for no, it's all good. But again, like, that's what this is all for, right? And I think that's the beauty of why we wanted to do this, because we only know it through our eyes. We don't know how it impacted you all on a mental, physical, emotional, spiritual level. So we wanted to highlight that, right? And I think that you've done a great job in that. And there was a couple of those messages that you said in your when you were speaking, that my mom, she was nodding to me, and I had our mic muted so we don't hear us like interjecting and agreeing and all that stuff. Right. So yeah, we're muted because we don't want it to, we don't want the screen to be cutting away during the powerful moments. So just a technical standpoint for our listeners out there, we want to give y'all the best experience. But there was a couple of moments where, obviously you called out, she looked at me because she went through that exact same thing. So, I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure your experience has been kind of similar. So yeah, what's life?
Yeah.
Nina, what was your experience like with Chris growing up and watching him play basketball? And obviously the injury that he sustained, it's got to be hands down the worst one that he ever went through. I'm sure maybe, I mean, did you ever hurt your knee or anything when you were playing, Chris?
Well, first of all, let's let her tell her backstory as well, because this is important for the context of the story.
For sure.
So,
all right, Debbie, I totally feel you. A mother's job is never ending. It's 24/7. Let's go back from the beginning. Chris has always been a very energetic kid. My trips to the emergency room started when he was about 4 years old. He's always attempting like new things. I remember it was one time, I think I might have been in the bathroom, and he used to watch the Power Rangers, excuse me, the Power Rangers on TV. I think I was in the bathroom, and he got up on the couch and decided he was going to do like a wrestling move or something. Ended up, the couch, he jumped up and hit his head against the point of the ceiling. And all of a sudden he's down on the floor, he's yelling and screaming. I'm coming out of the bathroom, there's like blood all over the place, and I'm rushing him to the emergency room because he hit his head on the end of like one of our ceilings. And I think another experience I had with him, he was riding his bike down the street, and I think there was a little girl across the street he was trying to impress by doing a wheelie.
that's right.
And he ended up falling off his bike, messing up the whole right side of his face. I think he still has the scar today. Right. So we ended up in the emergency room again. And it was just so weird because the doctors are looking at me like, what are you doing to this child? But he's always had this excess amount of energy. He's played like different sports. He played baseball. He played football. He played basketball. Growing up, we didn't have too many other injuries, maybe like a few where we ended up like in the emergency room. But I think the most critical ones for me was when I was not there. And I really understand when you say when you're so far away. The ones that impacted me the most was when he was playing overseas in Europe. He was in Asia, and he had a few bad accidents over there where he had to go and have like, did you have some surgeries?
Yeah, so the one she's referring to, the first one she's referring to, and probably the most serious was,
that was the first serious, right?
Yeah, the first serious one. I caught an elbow in practice, and when I was in Germany, and I actually broke my cheekbone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went pretty much, worst, obviously headache, migraine of my entire life, and had to go have surgery. This was about 3 or 4 days before my 26th birthday. And again, I'm in Germany at the time, she couldn't get to me.
Right.
So I'm just out here in the world, just on a surgery table and having to depend on my teammates and people in my organization to really get me through that, because that's pretty much all I had. So
yeah. That was like the hardest time for me, because I couldn't get to him. I didn't know what was going on. And to be honest with you, I didn't find out about it till after the fact. This had already happened. And then he told me, hey, Mom, I just had surgery. So you can just imagine what I was going through here in the United States, knowing, this was happening to him. And then I had no way to get to him. But yeah, it's just been a roller coaster with this guy right here. But I can just say that was the roughest time for me, was when I wasn't there. I couldn't talk to the doctors. I didn't know what he was going through. I didn't know if he had the support and the medical attention that he needed. But yeah, that was probably the first really serious injury that he had. And the most, I think the worst is the one that we're experiencing right now.
And what was that call like? Who called you when it happened? And because you were in California at that time, right?
Yeah, I was in California. He's in California. He was living on his own at that time, and I'm usually in the bed like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I'm lights out. And I get this phone call from him. I think it's about, I don't know, about 8:15, 8:20. And I'm like, hello? He goes, hey, Mom. I was like, hey, Chris. He goes, I just want to say I'm okay. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I was planning one of my games over in Santa Monica. I planted my foot the wrong way. And I'm in the emergency room at Kaiser in West LA. I'm like, oh my God. So I immediately got up looking for, I think I just put on anything at that time. And I do not like driving at night. That's one of my pet peeves. I do not like driving at night. Oh my God. But that night I could see everything. But I headed on over to Kaiser, and I was in the emergency room, like with his girlfriend. And to be honest with you, at that time, he said he planted his foot wrong. I'm thinking, oh, he's got just an ACL tear or a PCL tear. It's nothing serious. But that night is a night I'll never forget, because it turned out to be a lot worse than what we thought it would be. I didn't know he had injured himself as bad as he did. But we had some good doctors over there, and it could have resulted in him losing his leg if they had a certain time period, to work within. Because the blood flow because he tore, you can kind of like explain everything, because he's a doctor now.
Yeah.
Give him the specifics of what you actually did.
Yeah.
He severed his artery, you tore your ACL,
right. Yeah, a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And again, like for season 1 listeners, you all remember that. But an extensive knee injury, super rare. But the reason why I think it's important for her context is because what she didn't mention is she's also a former college basketball player. So she understands torn ACLs. Again, if you play sports or have a general understanding of the body, you get what is in the realm of possibility for athletics, right? So again, in gymnastics, it's high impact. So spinal compression, Achilles, because you're a lot of impact at once. Same thing in basketball, ACLs, a lot of torque, a lot of turn, a lot of high impact. So it's in the realm of possibility to happen. So that night was interesting, because not only did we not know what everything that had happened, because again, we understood that, okay, your ACL is probably torn, all these other things, but when you start talking about amputation, and when you start talking about, the biggest artery in your entire body is blocked, that's not only limb threatening, but that's life threatening. So, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I've made this same move hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times in my life. So what made this one so different? And honestly, my vascular surgeon at the time, he just said, this is a 1 in 2 to 3 million chance injury. Because usually when you have a knee dislocation, you'll tear your ACL, or you'll tear your LCL, you'll tear your popliteal tendon, you'll get nerve damage. But he's like, I've never seen anybody do all of them at the same time that wasn't in a motorcycle accident or a horrific car crash.
Right.
So when we're hearing these words come out of the doctor's mouth, obviously she's freaking out.
Yeah.
I'm freaking out, because I'm figuring like, damn, I just twisted my knee. Don't take it. Like, but I didn't understand the magnitude of the situation. So that night was, again, like she said, it lives and it will live forever, for better and for worse. But
I stayed there all night with him. I didn't go home because they said it's a possibility he would have to have surgery the next day. They were just waiting to see if that blood flow could get to his legs. And I can remember I was in the room with him, and the doctor came in. I think it was about at 6:30 in the morning.
It was early. It was like 4:30.
Was it 4:30?
Yeah.
Well, he came in early that morning. I know I woke up and he goes, we got to do surgery. And I'm like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts coming into the room and they start prepping him. And I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, we got to do surgery in order to save his leg. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that to me was just, it was overwhelming, because I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know the severity of his injury. And then I was like, well, how long is this going to take? He goes, oh, it's probably only going to take us like about 4 or 5 hours. I'm like, okay. And he left. They wheeled him out the room. They got all my contact information saying, we'll update you, as the surgery goes. But to make a long story short, what's supposed to be like a 4-hour surgery turned into like a 9 or 10-hour surgery. So of course, I was on pins and needles. I was at the hospital all day. A nurse kept calling me, but she wasn't giving me any information. I didn't know what was going on. When she would call me, she would just say, everything's fine, don't worry. Things are taking a little bit longer than expected. But she wasn't giving me any insight as to what was actually going on in the surgery for me to find out later on that there were complications. And I didn't get those complications until after Chris was awake and off of the the drugs that they had given him. He was very heavily sedated. I can remember when the surgery was over and they were wheeling him back into the room. His dad lives in Chicago, and he was actually coming out here for a visit that same day that he ended up going into the hospital. And I didn't even tell him, because we were at the emergency room the night before the morning his dad was leaving. And I didn't even tell him what had happened because I didn't want him to worry. I waited until he got here because he gets very emotional and, anxiety over things like that. I waited until he got here before I told him exactly, what had happened to Chris. But I made sure that we were there when he came back from the surgery so he could, see us. And I can remember the first thing he said to me when he came into the room was, "Mom, what the hell did they do to me?" Oh my God. I was like, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine." He goes, "Mom, did you understand my question? What the hell did they do to me?" And I was like, "Don't worry, everything's fine," because I didn't know. I didn't know what they had went through. I didn't know what happened in that emergency room. So yeah, it was that was it was emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. I didn't know that I had almost lost him. I didn't know that in that emergency room he had lost so much blood.
Mm-hmm.
And
internally you lost so much blood, right?
Yeah. So there was and Debbie, you've been in healthcare, so you know this, but I had compartment syndrome. So basically, like, there was a bunch of blood that was pulled up in my leg. And what happens is, not only was that artery blocked, but the cause of it, you can have compartment syndrome for a variety of reasons. It can be chronic or it can be acute. So this was acute, obviously, because that artery was occluded. But there was so much blood pulled up in my calf that when they did the fasciotomy to release all that pressure and muscle, all the blood came with it. And that was pretty much a life-threatening. It wasn't a limb-threatening. It was a life-threatening amount of blood that I had lost instantaneously, because apparently as soon as they cut it, horror movie, like, it just, all of it came out. So yeah, like, it was just one of those things. But again, these are things we found out afterwards, right? That, again, she was getting calls, everything's okay. Mm-hmm. And again, I understand they have to say that so you don't freak out in the waiting room.
Right.
But you don't get the severity or the complexity of it until when everything's done and you're stabilized and all that stuff. So, I can only imagine as a parent, not only fresh out of surgery. I mean, Debbie, you mentioned you were here for the surgery and everything, but that sense of uncertainty that you have as a parent, I think is probably one of the more devastating things. So if you could rewind back and kind of take us to those moments, could you?
Well, let me preface by saying Eric's surgery was not life-threatening. It was, you know what I mean?
Not the only, but my life-threatening stuff came with the depression and the isolation that came with laying and being stuck in bed in so much pain. But in terms of my back, like, I couldn't. That wasn't life-threatening.
That wasn't. Yes, the actual surgery, I did not experience, Nina, what you went through, but I can only imagine you. I hate to say this, but like that chronic memory, like that doesn't go away. Just even though he's better in terms of that, I'm sure you still think about it all the time. That, you know what I mean? As a parent,
I'm sure it was
traumatizing because even, like I said, Eric's surgery wasn't life-threatening, but the other stuff that he went through, I'm thinking about it all the time. And I know you guys don't really know this, but you're only as happy as your least happy child, so to speak, so I never know how I'm going to feel because I don't know how he's going to feel. Do you know what I mean?
It is kind of funny how both Chris and I, when we made that call, I remember I said, I'm okay,
Yeah.
but I'm not. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
You gotta defuse the bomb first. That's all.
Yeah.
Every day it's kind of a different day for him, as I'm sure it is for you too, Chris. Like, I feel okay. I don't feel okay. That pain's really bad. I've got this planned out, or, you're still going through active treatments.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Eric has settled down for hopefully a little bit. But it's like, oh my God, I went on a hike. I hurt my back. It's not feeling good today. I'm laying down,
Yeah. Yeah. And what she isn't saying either is she also has a very bad back. So she kind of understands the nerve pain that I kind of endure on a daily basis. She's got 2 bad shoulders. She's had a shoulder replacement, might need the other one. So she too can relate to
the pain side of things.
The pain and being in pain for years on end, and how it can
wear you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's not something to be appreciative to bond over, but having her understand, kind of what I'm going through is, nice at times.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I always say shared misery is often better than shared joy, right?
Yeah.
Because it allows you to go to the depths with someone that could easily be done with a shared win, or like, hip hop hooray, like, pizza party. But no, when you go to the depths of a situation and it really forces you to look internally, you have to grow and develop. So you can easily have a conversation with somebody that is going through that same trauma or is going through that same experience, and you're able to relate to them. And I think that bond that you form in the valleys can be better than the bond that you form on the peak, because it's easy to relate to somebody when everybody's on top.
Right.
But how deep can you go to relate to somebody when they're at their rock bottom? So, that shared misery that we all have, being on the chronic couch. Again, Eric, obviously people know our injuries. You just talked about your mom's injuries.
Mm-hmm.
My mom has her knee issues as well, right? And that's just kind of, that's the whole point, regardless of the guest. I mean, you have your knee situation right now.
I think we as Mom, Debbie, we can relate. We have these superpowers because before he even had his injury, I had went to the doctor and I need a knee replacement. So I was kind of, concentrating on that. I got, my different shots, trying to prepare myself. Okay, when can I fit this surgery into my schedule? And then lo and behold, Chris has his accident. And it's so funny how you think you're hurting, but when something happens to your child, that hurt just disappears. It's like you did. Yeah. It goes on hold. You go deep down inside and you have energy that you even never thought you possessed. Mm-hmm. Because when this injury happened to him, I was going to the hospital every single day to see him. I was still working because he didn't like the hospital food. He was losing weight. So I was, picking him up meals, going to the hospital every single day to see him, making sure he was okay. And I don't know, but my pain sort of just subsided, and it really, I would go and watch the nurses every day because he would have his dressings changed and everything. And he was in a rehab center probably for about a month. And I was, going back and forth, seeing him every day. And I was also I'm still working. We're working at the time. And I didn't realize that my work really didn't start until he actually came home. Yeah. And when he came home, mm-hmm. It was all hands on deck, 24/7. And I just did what I had to do to make him as comfortable as possible and make sure that he got the care that he deserved. Because when he came home, we thought we were going to get some type of home health care where they would come in, because his dressings had to be changed on a daily basis. And I would watch the nurses while I was in the hospital all the time do it. And I was like, wow. I mean, I thought they were amazing. And when he came home, we thought we were going to get some home health care, but we didn't. So I had to end up changing his dressing when he was here, and I was petrified. I was like, I can't do this. What if, he gets an infection or something? I'm not qualified. I'm not a healthcare professional. But Chris walked me through it, and we changed his dressings like every single day. So it's just amazing what you can do and what you're capable of when you have to take care of somebody that you truly love. I can remember the doctor told me in the hospital when he said I might have to change his dressings. And then I told him, I was like, I'm not qualified to do that. You're going to have to send somebody. He goes, no, you're more qualified than you think. And you'll do a better job than you think because you actually care about him.
Yeah, mama knows best.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't understand that statement until I had to actually change those dressings.
So you mentioned infection. My second back surgery got infected. What was that like when all that went down? Because I had my second surgery. She flew out, then she flew back home to Atlanta once she felt that I could, tend to
Manage.
myself.
Right.
And then the infection started.
Then the infection started, and he would like FaceTime me and show me, from the back what his wound was starting to look like, which was pretty nasty. And I was like, you need to take care of this. You need to take care of this. And
I started feeling sick.
he was feeling sick, and I came out again to LA, and
and I was changing my
he was
dressing
trying
myself.
to do it on his own.
It was
Thank
wild.
goodness he's like double jointed because he was able to get back there. I don't know how he got back there to change it. And I don't know if you mentioned what you had, which I'm sure you all know, MRSA. That's what he had, which is a big no-no after surgery. It's that's how the surgery.
I guess that is another life-threatening situation.
Well, it can be pretty bad. And
Yes.
it's not a good outcome for the surgery center. They look at their outcomes, and that is they do not like to hear that, because somewhere along the way he got an infection, either from the actual surgery, the surgery center, post-operatively at home.
Mhm.
I don't know, but then he was on 6 weeks of antibiotics. Well, they put him on one antibiotics, that didn't work. He had to go on another set of antibiotics, and then that ate up your stomach.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a mess.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, Chris and I, going through these injuries and as athletes, have faced countless challenges. But I think one of the beauties, obviously, that has come from this is, look how close we can sit, next to, our biggest cheerleaders, and, how fortunate we are that, we have. I'm proud to say I'm a mama's boy. And
There you just lost all your friends.
I wear that like a badge of honor. And so I think, pre all of this nonsense that has happened, I was always grateful and fortunate for my mom, but there's nothing like when she would come, I was like, a weight was lifted off. I was like, okay, mom's here.
Yeah. I can breathe.
And so that's why I'm so excited that, we had you and we had you, Nina, on today, because, I'm just, we're very lucky and fortunate.
Yeah, and that's one thing I kind of wanted to just maybe summarize with like one last question for UW is, my mom mentioned her inexperience, and obviously the doctor saying you're going to care more than anybody else will.
Mm-hmm.
You have the healthcare experience. So how valuable was that in helping Eric through this situation? Because you kind of alluded to it and says, well, that doesn't look too good. And because you have that lens, right? So how was that your additional superpower in helping him through this entire process to this day?
I don't know if it was I have this much knowledge, no knowledge about the back. You know what I mean? Like, I have a cursory knowledge. I'm a speech pathologist, but I worked in a hospital for close to 40 years. So I saw everything. Chris, I saw your injuries. I saw how, like from my experience because we saw, like I said, we saw everything. So when I saw him getting slowly addicted to pain meds, I knew that that was bad. When I saw the awful wound, I knew that that was bad. And I knew that I needed to advocate for him because he didn't know. But
she always knew the questions to
I
ask,
knew the
always, from my injuries from day one all the way until this one. That's what was the most helpful is, you know, she might have been across the country, but she would always pop in with the questions to ask.
And you know, I guess I was lucky that he gave me the go ahead, the blessing, like, please talk to my doctors. I don't mind.
She was on all the calls with the surgeon pre-op. I would, you know.
And sometimes, you know, the doctors are like, hey, this guy is not a kid, you know, he's an adult, he can speak for himself. And thankfully, because we are so close and because Eric, I guess, respected my knowledge, he let me speak to the doctors, and the doctors then allowed me to speak to them even before he spoke to them, you know, like right after the surgery, like I told you, you know, I was able to say off the pain meds as soon as he can. You know, I didn't want him, you know, to go cold turkey, but I knew that that was a big problem and I needed to
intervene.
I needed to intervene. I put my big mama foot down and I was like, yeah, we need to take care of that. Like I said, that was the thing that worried me almost more than anything. And now, of course, all the mental health issues that go along with all of it. It's hard not being, this is the first time I've seen him since Christmas. So look how close we are. But it's nice to see him with a smile on his face, you know, finally, because I hadn't seen a smile on his face
it's been years,
in a long time. So, Chris, I think you said last week, you know, every day is a little bit of a journey. This is, you know, hopefully we're on our way. He's on his way to feeling good, not just for a few hours at a time or a day at a time. Maybe it's a little bit longer. So, and as a mom, Nina, you know, if when you see the smile, when you see a little bit of like, I'm feeling better, it makes us go, breathe a sigh of relief.
I think, you know what? I met Eric. He's been to our home before. He's an outstanding gentleman. You've done well.
Thank you.
I think I'm glad they got together and I'm glad they created this.
I am
couch because I think it's therapy for both of them.
I
agree.
I agree. If
Yes.
it's help anyone, it's helped the two of them.
Yes.
It's so nice to see this friendship over, what was it, one run at the run club and both of you were out, or
pretty much.
Right, exactly.
then, you know, here I am, Chris, I'm meeting you truly face to face for the first time. I'm like, oh my God, he could be my second son or my, I shouldn't say that because his brother's going to be saying this. But no, truly, I feel like, you know, it's a little village here.
For sure. We're building a community, and
Yeah.
that's been Chris and my really main goal here, is to create a community. And you know, I hope other parents can see this too and can relate and, you know, gain some insight and knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. And again, I think, Eric, when you had this idea, obviously, you know, you had been internalizing it, and we mentioned that the crumpled up sheet of paper that's still in your fridge.
Yeah.
You know, when you came to me with this idea of like what you want to do, I was like, again, bro, let me just be your co-pilot. Like, let's do this, you know. And I think it was super important because it showed the growth in you begin, you know, from you and I've talked about this in past episodes and offline of, you know, all the things you go through and finally getting to that point where you wanted to speak to somebody, or that you could speak to somebody about it because you had spent so much time in yourself, because that was all you could do. That was all you could muster up. So, you know, your strength in still having to go to work and still having to do all these different things, you know, I think it was the perfect timing for both of us, because again, like I told you, when you first hit me up about it, I was just trying to come out of my own haze.
Right.
So it was kind of just, that was like those stars aligning of us meeting at the right, not meeting, but us starting this at the right time. And I think that it's super important because you should always have those things in your mind if you're going on a recovery journey, knowing that it's okay. We're not invalidating your journey of depression, anxiety, potential addiction for people out there. We're not invalidating that whatsoever. That is a part of the journey. It is a part of a grievable process of something that you've gone through that's traumatic. What you also need to look for is step 2. And that's going to be that communal support. So while it's built in, we both had our moms to support us on our journeys, we also still need our social aspect of it, right? So as your mom, Debbie, affectionately named it, because we grown as men. So we want to have, we're going to need our friends and stuff like that. So, we've been able to build this community. We've been able to build this medium for people. And again, the numbers from season 1, like, of course, they're not millions of followers, but we built something that people care about. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why we're back for season 2, because people are constantly asking us what's next. They want to hear different stories, and we're giving them that. And even yesterday, I went to T-Mobile to get my phone screen fixed. And ironically enough, the guy that was helping me, he's in his 20s and has had back issues and was talking about nerve pain. I was like, hey man, we got the Chronic Couch. Follow us on Instagram. So he was like, you already got a new follower. So he might be hitting you up about back pain. But that's just the beauty of it, right? Because again, we're providing providing a space for people to come hang out and learn and talk. Like, I've sent you 3 or 4 referrals already because people are just curious about who you are, your story, and they're not expecting a diagnosis, but they'd at least like to talk to somebody who is on their level that they may not be getting in a doctor's office because they're just getting sent home with pain meds. So I think that's the main thing that's super important. And I cooked up a little surprise that I didn't tell any of you about for our last little exercise. Okay. I would like to do this because I think that it is very important to always give people their flowers while they can still smell them. And my mom and I were talking about this morning. The beauty of creating content in today's world is that it will live on forever because it's on the internet. It will live on YouTube. It will live on Spotify, like these mediums that we've come to know and love. So with that being said, Eric, we're going to go first as sons.
Okay.
And we're going to tell our mothers things that we're grateful for about them in respect to our journeys, not only with these injuries, but beforehand. And then moms, we want to give you all the last word because we want that to be what resonates with the audience and what we leave them with. So Eric, you can go first, and then Debbie, you can reciprocate, and then I'll go next, and then Mom, you can reciprocate, and a little something to leave our fans with.
All right. I mean, mine's pretty simple, but obviously meaningful. I have zero filter with my mom. There's many a times I will not give examples, but she, I'm a woman. I'm the mom. So I think that's been, aside from being quote unquote, a built-in best friend, but just kind of being able to speak freely about whatever I want. And then of course with, always there for the good times, but for these bad times, especially over the past few years, I know there are many people out there that aren't as lucky, to have a mom that they can lean on so heavily. And I know with my mom, as much as, she gets stressed out, and I definitely know where I get my anxiety from, I think she, no matter how old I get, she likes to be wanted. And she, she's a caretaker. So yeah, I think those are probably my points of appreciation for sure.
Whoa, I don't know how to top that one because I have 2 great sons, different relationships with both of them, but special nonetheless. And I think Eric, who's gone through so many injuries, I think it unfortunately or fortunately has brought us even closer. And yes, I do. We try to set boundaries with each other, but on the other hand, on a weekend, he'll say, okay, Mom, I'll talk to you Monday. Like, I need a timeout from you. And then, by Sunday, I'm like, Is he okay? Did he have a good weekend? Did he have fun? And I do want him to have fun because for so long, and I know you understand this, Chris, he didn't have fun and he wasn't happy and he was depressed and he was alone in a dark room, laying on the bed, hurting. And that was so awful. And now when he can go out, it just makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hoping moving forward that, we can continue to be happy and enjoy our fun times. We're on a family vacay right now, our first one in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for sure, Chris. Yeah, I'm just, and I'm grateful for you, Chris, that you're able to be such a good friend to Eric and understand, because I think I see, many of your friends do not have these issues and they have really no idea what you are going through. Physically, Chris, they probably see you hobbling around and, that sort of thing. But I think up here is more important and they don't see it. I think you try to put on a happy face,
Mm-hmm.
and try to, show them that you're okay. But I think us moms know that sometimes you're really not okay.
Yeah.
And all we want is for you to be okay,
Mm-hmm. What about you, Chris?
Sorry, I went on for a long time.
No, you're good. But again, that's the whole point, right? Again, there's no time limits. It's just straight conversation. And, I appreciate both of you sharing that. And thank you for the kind words, Debbie, too. I think for me, my mom and I have always had a pretty close relationship. I've grown up with her by my side. She's seen me through the highs. She's obviously seen me through some of lows as well. And the most important thing of this entire journey is the sense of unconditional love, right? So again, Debbie, you're there for the peaks, you're there for the valleys, you're there for everything in between. And again, my mom is the same thing. And I think this injury for me slowed down time in a way, because my mom will be the first to tell you, before this, I was go, go, go.
Yeah.
I wanted to be everywhere, everything all at once. I wanted to be everything for everybody. And when life makes you hit the pause or the slow down button, it was a jolting experience. And to the point where, I had to move back in with my mom, and to the fact of where, again, I have traveled the world. I've been able to play professional basketball, all these different things. I'm so used to independence. And now to be back at home in my 30s, from a societal standpoint, Chris, damn, you're a failure. But no, that's what my journey calls for. So I think the most important experience for this has been the fact that we get so much time together.
Yes.
Because I am here every night. She knows when she comes out of the room, I'm going to be here, right? I'm going to we get to enjoy those conversations. So every single morning that I'm home, she comes out,
we have our coffee.
We have our coffee talks.
Yeah.
So whether that's about
politics,
whether that's about sports, whether that's about work, whether that's about life, whatever the most common theme is of that day or whatever we're going to head into, we sit there and we get 30 minutes to talk about it or 15 minutes to talk about it. And I'm just so grateful for it, because again, this is time that I wouldn't have had if I didn't get injured, because I would have been so far removed. So Debbie, earlier when you mentioned you want that text, you want that call, you want that FaceTime, the simplest things that take up a few minutes out of Eric and I's day makes all the difference, because as Eric mentioned, there are people who can't pick up that phone. They can't press that FaceTime button. And I don't want anybody to ever feel as though they could have done more. So while again, I'm in my mid 30s, I'm at home, I'm recovering. She's here by my side. We're having these coffee conversations. In 20, 30 years, when I'm not able to pick up that phone or have that conversation, this is going to be the time that I appreciate more than anything. And for that, I am grateful. I appreciate everything that you continuously do for me. And I love my mom. I love you. I'm looking at you. I love you, Mom. And, I think it's just important for us to say that as much as we can while we can, because, our injuries, albeit whether they're chronic, whether they're acute, you never know. You could be perfectly healthy and it still all ends tomorrow. So for all of your loved ones out there, please tell them that you love them as often as you can. Even if you're a grown-ass man, grown-ass woman, you can still, you're never too big for the words, I love you, to your loved ones. So that is my speech. So,
I don't know if I can follow that. All I can say is there's no manual and there's no guidebook to being a parent. You know, you just kind of figure it out. And I just want to say that being Christopher's mom is like one of my best accomplishments. He has made me so proud as a man, and I'm so proud of the young man that he's become. He has so much confidence.
not arrogance, okay? There's
He has so much confidence. He has so much positive energy. I just enjoy having conversations with him. I enjoy how he wants to give back to the community, back to like people. I enjoy his selflessness that he has. So all I gotta say is just, I mean, he makes me proud. I mean, every time I look at him, I just smile. He just has all this positive energy that surrounds him. And like I said, I'm just glad I'm his mother because he, like I said, he just makes me proud. And I love him dearly.
Love that.
Wait a minute, that's why I didn't have any more kids, because he set the bar too high.
I stopped after him.
there you go.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
it.
well, go ahead.
No, I think that's it. I'm as I said when we started, I think having our moms on as our first guests ever on the Chronic Couch is the best way to tee us up for an amazing season 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can say with you. I'm echoing that same sentiment. There is no better place to start this journey than of season 2 of opening up to community and opening up to guests than right here. Right. I think that's the most important thing. And that's why things work out for a reason in terms of, you know, guests not being able to make it and everything. Maybe this was always supposed to be our season 2. Hell, it could have been our season 1, but we at least know people know who we are, so they give a damn.
Yeah.
But now, because they're like, who are these 4 people on the internet that are just talking?
Yeah.
But
Wait a minute, I just want to interject. I'm teasing Chris all the time. I'm telling him that this Chronic Couch is going to become as famous as that couch on Friends. You just watch and see.
that's true. She's thinking about ways to put it up. You know, they're going
Yeah.
to put it in a museum of sorts.
That's right.
Right. Whatever house there is in the future, it has to be a room dedicated for this couch. We're going to put
Yes.
the old plastic on it and everything to make sure there's no dust on it. But yeah, like I said, I'm extremely grateful for you both for not only today's episode, but again, your consistent efforts and continuously showing up for us when we need it and when we think we don't. Because again, as young men in today's society, there's this constant pressure to constantly put a smile on and show up and go to work and be there for people who need us. But who do the superheroes go to when they need that reinforcement? And we have our answers. And I'm glad, again, we're very blessed to have both of our answers here, to have these conversations with us and on a medium that will allow it to live forever. So this is something, Debbie, I know you support us. You be commenting, you be watching, you be listening. This is something that you'll always be able to come back to, which is the powerful thing that we wanted to convey with this. And yeah, like I said, this is just, it's an extreme accomplishment for both of you. It is our sign of gratitude as a thank you for everything that you have done and will continue to do. And this is a hell of a kickoff for the rest of the stories, because as you know, Eric, we got some stories coming up from some wonderful people, from some extraordinary people.
Yeah.
But I think it's always important to start at home, just like we did when we were kids. So
Yes, sir.
that is today's episode. So yeah, season 2, episode 1 in the books.
Go.
All right. Well, thank you all again, as always. I hope you enjoyed. Season 2 is going to be a lot of great conversations like this, more perspectives, more voices, more experiences. So you know where to find us at this point. And if you don't, we ain't hard to find. So tell a friend to tell a friend, and we'll see you on episode 2.
See y'all.